Sorry.
We are told that whatever happens during the week, open up a Chumash, look what we learned on Shabbos, and you'll find a remez, a hint from the Parsha Sashavua for something, all that goes on during the week. We just learned on Shabbos. Moshe Rabbeinu was put into the Yam Suf, put into the Yam. Basya, the daughter of Paro, was walking. Vatiftach vatireyu asayelot. She sees a little boy in the cradle floating down. V'hine na'ar bocha. And she hears a boy cry. So Rashi and all the Meforshim asked the question, if it begins by saying Vatiftach vatireyu asayelot, she saw a young child, how could she say a second later the pasuk V'hine na'ar bocha? Nar is a teenager, someone older. Yelled as a little baby. So whether Moshe Rabbeinu, he was all of a few months old, he was a yelled, he wasn't a nar. Why does it say V'hine nar? So Rashi and all the Meforshim asked the question. And I would like to share with you a Baal HaTurim, which I think is very apropos to the Levaya this morning. The Baal HaTurim says, and it says in the pasuk V'hine nar bocheh, he simply says Zeh Aaron HaKohen. The gematria of V'hine nar bocha is Zeh Aaron HaKohen. What is the Baal HaTurim saying? He's saying that we know that Miriam also came down when Moshe was put into the river. The pasuk says Vatei v'achosa merachok l'deya ma yeyasalo. Miriam came to watch, and when Bishop couldn't find someone to nurse, she's the one that ran to get Yaakov. We know that Miriam was there. Where was Aaron, the brother, at this moment? So the Baal HaTurim says, when the pasuk says V'hine nar bocha, it doesn't mean that Moshe was crying. Moshe was in the river. He was floating down. It's a yellow. She saw the yellow. V'hine nar bocha is not referring to Moshe. It's referring to Aaron. And hence the gematria of V'hine nar bocha is Zeh Aaron HaKohen. What I think the Baal HaTurim is saying isn't simply telling us that besides Miriam, Aaron was also watching. Miriam was 5 and Aaron was 3. I think the Baal HaTurim is telling us something fascinating. We know that in 80 years, when they leave Mitzrayim, so Moshe becomes, of course, Moshe Rabbeinu, and Aaron becomes the Kohen Gadol. If I were to ask you what was the midah of Aaron HaKohen, so we're told he's Ohev Shalom, he's Rodei Shalom, he loves peace, he runs after peace, he pursues peace. Those are his actions. What was his midah? What exactly prompted Aaron to be the Ohev Shalom and the Rodei Shalom? It always speaks about what he did. He would run. At night he couldn't sleep. He'd get people together, husbands and wives and friends. He was always showing, he was always showing. But what was his midah? What pushed him? What propelled him? The answer obviously is that the reason why Aaron was so propelled to get involved was because he was bothered. Everybody else went to sleep at night. He couldn't because he heard somebody arguing. Everybody went to work the next day. Aaron couldn't because he knew 2 friends were not talking. Everybody sat down to eat and Aaron had no appetite because he knew a husband and wife were not getting along. Things bothered Aaron so much, he simply could not go on. His heart was breaking when people didn't get along. His heart was so sensitive, he simply couldn't function. And therefore, he was an Ohev Shalom and a Rodev Shalom because his Lev Tov was simply so remarkable, he couldn't move on until he made the proper peace. When did Aaron HaKohen become Aaron HaKohen? We know Moshe became Moshe Rabbeinu when HaKadosh Baruch Hu met him at the burning bush. Snap Boer Beige. When did Aaron receive that Lev that turned him into the Kohen Gadol? When did he get it? I think the Baal HaTurim tells you he had it when he was 3 years old. When the pasuk says V'hine nar bocheh, and the Baal HaTurim says Zeh Aaron HaKohen, he's not simply telling you that was Aaron and that's the gematria that he was there. He was telling you Zeh Aaron HaKohen, that's the gematria. At the age of 3, Aaron's heart was so sympathetic. At the age of 3, Aaron was so feeling his empathy towards others. He went there. Why? Because he had the midah already of Aaron HaKohen, where his brother is in the water. He didn't go simply like Miriam to see what's going to happen. He went because it bothered him. He went because his brother was in peril. He went because his slave was so big it couldn't be contained in himself. He needed to be there with his brother. The meat of Aaron HaKohen was there when he was 3. Because of this pasuk, Hinei Nor Bochez, Aaron HaKohen, 80 years later, Aaron is going to be coronated as a Kohen Gadol. But it was simply because at the age of 3, he already felt for others. Rabbi Weiss mentioned Chaim Ozer would come to the young Israel. I'll be perfectly honest. I was not here 18 years ago. I was not here 25, 30 years ago. I do not know who built the young Israel. I do know that he did build, Chaim Ozer did build the Aguda, that I do know. But he used to come to the young Israel to daven. We have many minyanim at many different times, and very often he came to daven. For the last 11 years that I've been in the young Israel, and I've seen Reb Chaim Ozer hundreds of times coming in and out of the shul, which means he's been here thousands of times. But the hundreds of times I saw him either on a baseball field, or at a simcha, or in my shul, there was never once, he did not come over to me and either give me a very big handshake or a hug. Sometimes in the morning, if I wake up either a little bit late, or I had a difficult night and I'm running and I'm late, and I'm moving to get to shul on time, it was difficult because whenever you bumped into Reb Chaim Ozer, you didn't go through him because he was a little bit larger than I was. You couldn't go through him because he wouldn't let you pass. Because if you didn't shake his hand and reciprocate his warmth, he did not let you go. He would ask you what is wrong. He was large, he was jovial, he was robust, he was strong, he was domineering, he can do anything, and as Rabbi Weiss mentioned, he did everything in this building. But I think besides his large, robust, jovial, physical appearance, what was even larger and more jovial and more robust was his lev tov. I have rarely met anybody with a demeanor like Reb Chaim Ozer. I've never seen him upset. I never saw him not smile. I've never seen him give everyone in the hallway the biggest Shalom Aleichem, how are you, good morning. Aaron HaKohen from the age of 3, because of his lev, which propelled him 80 years later to be a Kohen Gadol. You'd have to ask the family, ask the Rebbetzin when, at what age Reb Chaim Ozer had his lev tov. But I'm assuming if you'd ask the parents, it goes back as a young child. I have rarely met an individual with a lev tov like Reb Chaim Ozer. He was not a member of my shul. He didn't owe me anything. He simply, every single morning or afternoon, whenever he came, and he saw me at any simcha, he would corner me. And it was easy for him to corner because Reb Chaim Ozer was Reb Chaim Ozer, and he simply asked either about me or about some of my children that are the same age of his children, whether it's about football or about baseball or about some youth league or about some learning, or simply how are you and how is your wife doing. I have never met him that he wasn't smiling and bursting from the seams simply with simchas achayim because of his lev tov. Aaron HaKohen didn't become a Kohen Gadol when he was 83 because of Kadosh Baruch Hu appointed him when he left Mitzrayim. He had a midah as a young child of a lev tov, which simply grew until his body could not contain it, and he became a Kohen Gadol. The lev tov. Reb Chaim Ozer, from all the mention that I know in the community, I don't know many that have a lev tov like Reb Chaim Ozer. If Rabbi Weiss is going to mention tens, if not hundreds, of accomplishments that he did, I think the common denominator is that he simply cared. He cared so much for the shul, he cared so much for the community, he cared so much for the family and for friends. His lev tov was simply remarkable. I know that Lenny and Rabbi Weiss called me late at night, early in the morning. I was at a Shalom Zacher Friday night. I was with one of the sons, and I asked, I have to go visit. I asked Mechila for not visiting more often. A smile on his face in the morning when he saw you, that lev tov. I am positive that everybody in the room, and picture that vision of Chaim Ozer walking over to you and giving you that Shalom Aleichem. His Lehrfield should be with us. We should know from no Matzar.